Everyone tells you to change your oil filter every 5,000 miles. What if the filter isn't the weak link at all? An SAE study found many oil filters can hold around 13.4 grams of dirt, enough that 90% of vehicles could hit 30,000 kilometers before clogging, and half could reach about 82,000 kilometers. So, what clogs first? The tiny filter up front, your air filter, fighting the dust that turns oil into a lapping compound. Today, we'll show why obsessing over oil intervals misses the real threat, and how air filtration can double your engine's odds in high-dust regions. If 5,000 miles is the rule, why do so many oil filters quietly hang on for 30,000 to even 80,000 kilometers before they actually plug? The gap comes from how little most engines load a filter under normal conditions, and how much capacity that small can of folded media really has when dust isn't pouring in all day. A large field analysis found that a filter with about 13.4 grams of holding capacity lines up with 90% of vehicles reaching around 30,000 kilometers before restriction forces bypass, and about half stretching near 82,000 kilometers when conditions stay favorable. That means the filter's storage space for debris, not the calendar, decides when it's done. Yet we still change the filter with every oil swap because it feels safe, and because service schedules assume lots of airborne dirt, short trips, cold starts, and a margin for abuse. Marketing piles on by quoting short intervals built around worst-case loads. So, the every oil change habit sticks even when the media has tons of room left. Think about the daily driver who cruises a temperate city with a sealed intake path, intact airbox clips, paved routes, and steady highway speeds. The crankcase sees fewer blow-by spikes, the air filter isn't breathing talc all week, and soot loads stay tame. In that kind of routine, the oil filter gathers contaminants slowly for months, not days, and the pressure drop across the element barely moves until a lot of grams stack up. Here's another twist from the same research set. Turbo versus non-turbo didn't shift clogging rates in a meaningful way, and gasoline versus diesel didn't either.
Locate the oil drain plug on your vehicle and place your oil collection pan underneath it. Using a socket ratchet, remove the plug from the oil pan on your vehicle. The oil filter is usually located beside the oil pan or under the hood of your vehicle near the engine. Use your finger to dab a bit of fresh oil on the new filter's gasket and spread it around evenly. Then twist the filter onto the stud and tighten by hand until it is snug. Clean around the cap before removing it so no dirt falls into the engine. Take the cap off and place the funnel into the opening. Add the amount of oil specified in your owner's manual and then replace the cap.
That challenges the knee-jerk idea that boost or fuel type makes a typical full-flow oil filter fill up sooner. The bigger swing came from the dirt the engine inhales, not the badge on the valve cover. So if you're blaming the turbo, you may be looking in the wrong direction. To sort out why some filters last longer, separate 3 traits. Capacity is how many grams of solids the media can hold before restriction climbs and the bypass valve opens. Efficiency is what fraction of a given particle size it traps on each pass, often better in synthetic media at small microns. Restriction is how hard the pump has to push to move oil through. Tighter media or fewer effective pleats raise pressure drop and can trigger bypass even if capacity isn't maxed. Cellulose elements usually trade lower cost for lower efficiency and capacity, while synthetic or blended media combine finer fibers with stable pores, so they hold more with less restriction. Pleat density and stiffness matter too. Well-supported, evenly spaced pleats use the full surface, while sloppy stacks collapse and lose volume fast. Real numbers show the spread. A Wix XP can hold about 18.1 grams. Fram Ultra sits near 13.6 grams. Purolator Boss lands around 12.5 grams. Royal Purple measures near 10.1 grams. And Delco UltraGuard Gold about 9.1 grams. That's a meaningful range in how long a filter can accept debris before its bypass spring has to step in. The catch is that most cars never feed that much grit to the oil in a short span, so even mid-pack capacity isn't getting challenged on a quiet commute. And that points to the real setup. Even when the oil filter has room to spare, the real messmaker shows up ahead of it. Dirt that sneaks past the first stage doesn't ask the oil filter for permission. It settles in the sump and circulates until it either gets caught or causes wear. In clean to moderate environments, the oil filter isn't the pinch point. It's running well under its ceiling for long stretches and could keep guarding the engine past the next routine oil change without choking. So if the oil filter isn't dictating your schedule, what tiny filter up front is actually drowning first? Which tiny cheap filter can double its workload in a single dusty day and quietly turn clean oil into something abrasive? The one in your intake. The engine air filter is your first line of defense, and every grain it fails to stop doesn't vanish. It heads straight through the cylinders and into the sump. That means the oil starts carrying the fallout from dirty air long before the oil filter even gets a chance. When that happens, the oil doesn't just look bad. It behaves like a mild grinding paste that raises wear on rings, bearings, and cams. That's the quiet link between what your engine breathes and what your oil must carry. Here's where the swing gets big. In regions with heavy ambient dust, Africa, Australia, the Middle East, and much of South America, filters face roughly 50 to 100% higher clogging rates compared to Western Europe. Same engines, completely different load on the intake side. The air filter isn't just trapping more, it's doing it faster, which raises intake restrictions sooner and lets more fines slip if the media or sealing isn't up to it. Move from coastal city streets to a desert edge, and the job that looked easy yesterday becomes a full-time grind today. Why does that matter so much for wear? Those fines that make it past the air filter don't all burn away. A portion survives combustion, ends up in the oil, and lingers right in the size range that does the most harm. Particles around 4 to 6 microns are notorious because they're common. They match or exceed the oil film thickness in loaded bearings, and they get trapped where metal surfaces come closest. Go smaller than 2 microns and the wear drops off. Hang around that mid-single-digit size, and the damage adds up fast. That's the lapping compound effect in plain terms. Now add a tough truth about full-flow oil filters. Many solid name-brand elements deliver a beta ratio near 2 at about 20 microns, which translates to roughly 50% capture at that size. So the fines that hurt most, right in that lower single-digit to teens window, often keep circulating. They're small enough to dodge the main filter, large enough to abrade critical surfaces, and numerous enough to matter over a few thousand miles. Load the air filter hard, and you feed that loop with fresh grit every trip. You can see it in a single weekend. Take the same car you drive to work, spend an afternoon on a dry, rutted trail behind a convoy, and then pull the next oil analysis. Silicon spikes. The air filter is heavier, the intake tract shows dust traces, and the oil now carries fines your full-flow filter only partially removes. The weekday commute didn't change the engine. The environment did, and the air filter took the hit first. There is a way to starve those fines after they're in the sump. Bypass filtration. Slow, high-efficiency side stream systems peel off a small portion of oil and scrub it down to finer levels, often near 5 microns and below. That aligns with research showing reduced wear when you capture more of the sub-10 micron crowd. It doesn't excuse a weak air filter, but it can cut the penalty when dust still finds a path in.